Our first trip, our first vacation, our first time together where he is not trying to get arrested. So we are having a wonderful time. I came to Vancouver in 2004, and I had learned about Mark Emery because he was in the newspapers. He was running for political office in our province with the British Columbia Marijuana Party. He formed many different political parties, helped finance many marijuana political parties, and I moved to Vancouver to become an activist. And in 2004, George Bush was still in charge of America. Canada seemed like the paradise for marijuana. People would go to Vancouver to meet the Prince of Pot, Mark Emery. They would travel to Canada to experience freedom of marijuana. And even newspapers, magazines, they all said Canada is where change is happening. Canada was going to decriminalize marijuana when we had a Liberal Party government with Prime Minister Jean Chrétien. And he said there would be a fine for marijuana smoking, but no more arrests. That didn't end up happening because America, with George W. Bush, said, you cannot do that. We will shut down the border. We will never let Canada change their laws. And Mark Emery in Vancouver went to an event with the United States drug czar, John Walters. And John Walters was there to tell the mayor-elect, there had been an election, and the police and the whole country of Canada, you cannot legalize it. We will not let you legalize it. And Mark was there with many activists. They bought a table and they started saying, liar, go home, that everything you say is not true. And the drug czar was so angry. And he pointed at him and said, I don't know who you are. I've never heard of you. And he was so upset because our own mayor said, the drug czar is an idiot. So America was very upset. But they came up into Canada in 2005 and had Mark arrested in Canada, facing American charges to face life in US prison maximum, 30 years minimum. So in 2005, Mark, for funding the marijuana movement, was facing 30 years to life in prison. And the whole world heard about this. We are very grateful that around the world we had rallies of support, that activists in countries where it was far more punitive and harsh with the law, they would rally in the streets, go to Canadian embassies and say, free the Prince of Pot, do not send him to prison. So thank you to everyone around the world for all of their support all these years. And then Canada elected in 2006 the Conservative government with Prime Minister Stephen Harper. Very bad man in so many ways. Very bad for the environment, very bad for women's rights, very bad for arts, culture, education, science. Canada, if you might know, is going into a dark time. But at the same time, the United States in 2010 was having the first legalization vote at a state. And it was in California with Proposition 19. And Mark had just been sentenced in America to a 5-year prison sentence he agreed to. They offered 5 years to him. And in 2010, it was an honor to go down and help campaign for the first legalization vote in America. And then Mark's own prosecutor, John McKay, government prosecutor, decided to say, legalize it. And I testified with him in a Washington state legislature to legalize it. And he came up to Canada and sat with me and our provincial attorney general saying, legalize it. And that's why Mark is in prison, but his own prosecutor has joined our side and realized he was wrong. So Mark and I were invited to be official endorsers of Washington State's Initiative 502. And we were also connected to Colorado with Amendment 64 through Mason Tvert being an incredible activist inspired by Mark many years before his first early work in universities with SAFER, the group called SAFER. And Mason and so many activists work together. There are hundreds of thousands of people who were on the ground, making phone calls, giving money, talking to media, and voting. And those people got out and made the difference. But for me as a Canadian, seeing my Canadian husband in American prison, even though he never left Canada, even though he paid taxes, even though he ran for office, the world knew who he was. I was excited to see the changes in America, but sad for my country. Because even though Mark paid for court cases that helped make medical marijuana legal in Canada, our conservative government is punishing medical marijuana users. They have removed the right to grow your own plants. They are punishing people in different ways with new prison sentences, mandatory minimum guaranteed prison, many different changes in our laws in Canada. Very devastating, very bad. But America offers hope. So when I went in 2012 to Washington State to help campaign, it was such an honor because I told them at the Seattle Hemp Fest events and at different media, I said, if only Colorado votes to legalize it, the world can ignore it as one experiment, like a California of its own, but something different, and we'll ignore it. But if 2 states legalize it, if Washington State, a border state, an international border state, 1 hour south from our home, 1 hour we drive, and that's Washington. If 2 states do it, the message will be heard around the world. And the importance is because America has to legalize it first, in some form or fashion, because the drug war began in America. Every country around the world that suffers under a drug war has that because America made them do it and makes them do it still. So when I went to America, I said, well, I wish Canada would do it first, and everybody thought his work and activist work would make it happen first. But no, America is where it must happen first, because the drug war is like a cancer. And to get rid of the cancer, you must get rid of the tumor. And the core of the drug war, the heart, the tumor, the cancer of the drug war is in America. And this November, the capital of America, Washington, D.C., will be voting on legalization, as well as Alaska and Oregon. That's 3 states voting this November, 2 states already done. Many more will introduce legislation, medical marijuana for children. These examples are necessary because in Canada, while Mark was gone, things went backwards, and it is very tough for us now, despite having good things like dispensaries in Vancouver and Toronto. The rest of Canada struggling still. But America sets the example. So when legalization passed in 2 states, it was perfect because you had 2 different styles of legalization, so that you could choose the good things, ignore the bad, create new laws. And right now in Canada, we have a federal election next year. And we have had a conservative government for too long, since 2006. And right now they have majority power, which means everything they want made into law becomes law, no opposition. Harper is more powerful than President Obama when it comes to making laws in the country. So we have an election next year, and we have a party called the Liberal Party of Canada. The Liberal Party has governed Canada for most of our history, but right now they are in the 3rd position, except they now have a leader, Justin Trudeau. He is the son of a former Prime Minister, Pierre Elliott Trudeau. Canada loves Trudeau. So we now have young Liberal Trudeau with the Liberal Party, and in the year of 2012, the Liberal Party made it official policy to legalize marijuana. And since then, the conversation, especially with Washington, Colorado, since 2012, the conversation of legalization is happening. Conservatives will not let it happen. Liberal Party will make it happen. So I am honored to say that I have been asked to run in the federal election to seek the nomination. Hopefully I will be the candidate. I must win the race. But Mark and I are known across Canada now for saying, vote Liberal, vote legalization, because Stephen Harper and the Conservatives will continue to turn Canada into the dark ages. And Trudeau and the Liberal Party of Canada will legalize it. And my prediction is that with the election next year, we will have a Liberal government of Canada. And the Liberal government of Canada will say, well, we need to legalize it. We said that we would. And Uruguay is doing it, other places are doing it, Washington State on the border. We should legalize it. So then, we'll say 2015, legal in Canada. 2016, maybe President Obama will say, it's legal in Canada, it's legal in America, we should do it here too. And maybe Obama will leave his office and end prohibition in 2016. And my understanding is that the United Nations in New York will be discussing ending prohibition in 2016 as well. So I think the next 5 years, around the world, we're going to see very exciting things happening. For us in Canada, Mark Emery came home a hero. He spent all the money and gave it all away. He came home with so much respect, and we're so honored the rest of the world wants him too. Canada is a bit jealous that we left them behind right away. We're seeing the world now. But we're very excited because the example is being set not just in America, and not just hopefully soon in Canada, but in many places around the world. And we do have to work together because we are winning for the first time ever, and it feels good. So thank you. Gracias.